Happy Friday, everybody. James Hancock here. I'm back to review The Trial of the Chicago 7, which dropped today on Netflix after a limited theatrical release over the last few weeks. The movie was written and directed by Aaron Sorkin, who's no stranger to courtroom dramas. A Few Good Men put Aaron Sorkin on the map back in 1989, first as a play and then as the movie adaptation starring Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise in 1992. This particular courtroom drama follows the trial of the Vietnam War protesters charged with conspiracy and crossing state lines with the intention of inciting riots at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Now, if you're looking for an escape from today's political tension, this is probably not the movie for you, but there are a lot of really interesting parallels between this story and some of the issues that we're facing in 2020. But just so I don't bury the lead on how I feel, my quick 25 words or less reaction on this film is that if you're a fan of Aaron Sorkin, and I am, I suspect you'll enjoy the movie, but perhaps not completely love it, in that it exemplifies some of Aaron Sorkin's strongest and weakest characteristics as a writer when he's directing his own material. When it comes to politics and Aaron Sorkin, what I find interesting is just how many people I talk to who like his politics but don't like his style of storytelling, and conversely, how many people there are out there who dislike his politics but absolutely adore his style of storytelling. The show The West Wing was an absolute monster hit because people from across the political spectrum were totally addicted. And I can't begin to imagine a show like that taking off in today's tribal climate, where unfortunately we have so many viewers and critics who will praise or condemn a movie based on the storyteller's agenda, irrespective of the style, craftsmanship, talent, or ability of the filmmaker in question. For my part, I'm much more interested in the art of storytelling. I like style, I like entertainment, and there's no denying that Sorkin has written some of the most interesting movies of the last 20 years, including Charlie Wilson's War, Moneyball, Steve Jobs, and my personal favorite, The Social Network, which I think is the best film that David Fincher has ever directed. Aaron Sorkin's personal brand is the definition of smart entertainment, and I'm not saying he doesn't write his fair share of stinkers. Season 2 of The Newsroom forced me to stop watching the show altogether, but when Aaron Sorkin made the jump to directing with Molly's Game back in 2017, I was all for it, and I was one of the first in line, and I have to admit, I did enjoy that movie on the whole. So let's get into The Trial of the Chicago 7. Aaron Sorkin wrote the script back in 2007, originally for Steven Spielberg to direct, but a writer's strike killed the momentum of the project at the time, and Spielberg and Sorkin went their separate ways and moved on to other things. And we have no way of knowing what that movie would have been like, but I feel like Sorkin's better when he's working with really strong collaborators. His strengths as a writer are undeniable, but as a director, he's a little bit more of a journeyman, and overall just less distinctive in his approach. But directors like Mike Nichols and David Fincher and Danny Boyle, they all brought out the best in him as a writer, and there were times while I was watching The Trial of the Chicago 7 where I felt myself yearning for a stronger director at the helm. That said, the cast is unbelievable. We've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Sacha Baron Cohen, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, Jeremy Strong, Eddie Redmayne, Mark Rylance, Michael Keaton, Frank Langella. The list goes on and on. Also, I should apologize for any and all legal mumbo-jumbo that I'm going to inevitably screw up while discussing this movie, but most of the story takes place months after the Democratic National Convention in '68. Richard Nixon's now president, and his new Justice Department is pushing hard for indictments of some of the key figures involved at the riots in Chicago. And depending upon who you ask or how close they were to the action, some people blame these riots on the cops, and some people blame these riots on the protesters. And as lead prosecutor, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, he has to prove that the Chicago 7 were essentially part of a vast conspiracy across state lines, where several different political groups with wildly different goals and tactics, that they all came to Chicago in concert to commit acts of violence. And that's a very tough sell, and Levitt's character is a little bit ambivalent about this, but he gets to work all the same. And most of the ensuing drama takes place during the trial. But I'd argue that some of the most visceral and exciting parts of the film are where we see the riots in flashback from the vantage point of the key characters involved. And as one character very wisely states, trying to control an angry mob is like trying to direct and control the Mississippi River. And all it really takes is one or two bad actors on either side during a tense face-off, and before you know it, blood's gonna flow. In any case, what's going to make or break this movie for most viewers is the tension between Judge Julius Hoffman, played by the great Frank Langella, or Frank Langella, never quite known how to say his last name, but he has a series of confrontations with the character played by Mark Rylance, William Kunstler, who is defending the Chicago 7. Kunstler is very earnest and very sincere, while Judge Hoffman, on the other hand, is very stubborn, incredibly belligerent, and he spends most of the movie bullying everyone in his courtroom in a trial that seems engineered to doom the defendants from the word go. And I have to admit that this dramatic tension was kind of hit or miss. We've all seen countless courtroom dramas in film and television, and it's tough to make them feel fresh and exciting. There are really only so many ways for characters to scream objection and overruled before the whole dramatic premise starts to feel tired. The real missed opportunity for me was the open conflict between Judge Hoffman and the character played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, Bobby Seale, co-founder of the Black Panthers. They spar pretty aggressively throughout the first half of the movie, and in one of the most dramatic scenes of the movie, the judge orders Bobby to be bound and gagged. And it's an absolutely ruthless, brutal moment, and Sorkin tries his best to make this one of the big dramatic payoffs of the film. But as it plays out, the emotions and the staging, it all just starts to feel really overwrought. And if I have one lingering complaint about Sorkin's work as a writer, is that at times he can come across as smug and self-righteous, kind of getting in the way of his own material. That said, I did like seeing Yahya Abdul-Mateen getting to stretch his acting muscles outside of his work in Aquaman and Watchmen. My favorite part of the movie by far were the performances of Sacha Baron Cohen and Jeremy Strong as Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin. They lean into all the crazy excesses of their characters and are clearly having a blast, and I absolutely love watching the culture war between those two characters and Eddie Redmayne's character Tom Hayden, a character who's on trial right beside them, but is their ideological opposite in pretty much every way, even if they have some overlap in their goals. But Jeremy Strong had me absolutely cracking up as his character falls in love with an undercover FBI agent who, in his words, absolutely crushes his soul. And Michael Keaton also makes a great appearance as the former Attorney General for LBJ, who at the time of the riots had chosen not to issue any indictments to the Chicago 7, at least while LBJ was still in office. But now that Nixon's in office, it becomes abundantly clear that this whole trial was basically political theater to try and imprison some of the key figures turning American sentiment against the war in Vietnam. And there are times during all the courtroom hijinks where it's easy to forget that this whole thing came about because of a Vietnam War protest. But to his credit, Aaron Sorkin tries repeatedly throughout the film to remind us what this trial is all about. But I must admit that sometimes the Vietnam War definitely fades into the background of the film. In any event, I think the movie is well worth a look, especially if you're a fan of Aaron Sorkin, but I wish I could say that it's a complete and total slam dunk. I think there's a very good chance that over time, Aaron Sorkin's going to prove himself to be much more effective as a screenwriter, working with other directors as opposed to a writer-director working off on his own, because I feel like when he's working with really good directors, they protect him from indulging in some of his own worst impulses. He has a small tendency that's undeniable to create scenes of nauseating sentimentality bordering on cuteness, and these scenes by no means ruin his movies for me. Like I said before, I'm a big fan of most of his work. But if you compare a movie like The Trial of the Chicago 7 with a movie like The Social Network, they really don't even belong in the same conversation together. But that's all I have to say for now. I'm thrilled that we even got a chance to see this movie, because originally Paramount was going to release it, but due to COVID, that was all being interfered with. In any event, Netflix, they swooped in and they just bought the movie outright, which I imagine is going to continue to happen for the next 6 to 12 months as the movie industry continues to try to reinvent itself during the season of the virus. But I hope you enjoyed my review. Please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. And if you want to talk more about Aaron Sorkin or whatever, you can always find me on Twitter at Colbrax. But I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.